This is the Finance Committee, August 27th, 2026 at 5:30 PM. We have a quorum. And do we have any public comment? I'll start with that. Is anybody on air, Peggy?
Don't see any hands raised.
No hands raised? Okay. So the first item on the agenda is a discussion of the wastewater sewer cost projections and potential alternatives. And I'll introduce it by a little bit of a framework, a little bit repeating what we had at our last meeting, but again, just to give a context to what it is we think we're trying to accomplish as a group, and we'll have discussion about what you guys think we should do. But as we discussed at the last meeting, big picture is that sewer is the largest expense that the town is facing over the next 40+ years. And pretty much everything, here comes Elaine, right on time, just a minute late. We just started, Elaine, just getting started. And Michael Herman has just arrived, our liaison. Welcome. You know, as everybody knows, we got a fire station now approved, which is great. We've got a whole host of rather large expenses coming in the future, things that are good investments. We've got schools, we've got potential community center, we've got a capital needs study, which should be coming soon. I'm not sure if the town has received it or not yet, but when we get that, that's going to be a big capital obligation. Potential climate mitigation, library, which is not in our 5-year plan right now, but is a need of the town. And so what we're doing is narrowing our focus for the time being to sewers. And that's what we discussed at our last meeting and agreed that we would do that to try to analyze and understand what is the long-term comprehensive cost structure and what potential alternatives are there that might be better off for us financially. And I did send out some information out to the committee a couple days ago, and then a summarized version of it just this morning, I think. Just so you know, Todd's really a numbers guy, an Excel guy. He's a finance guy. I'm not. He's been working on this. We've discussed with Elaine and Craig and myself, just trying to hash this stuff out so we can then bring it to the larger group to examine. So my thought was that I think it's illustrative to look at a couple of these examples, literally to illustrate what are the costs versus what they might be if we chose to go another direction, so that it can then further our, well, we should discuss it and see what it is and see what you guys think. Part of our responsibility is to educate the town for the financial obligations that the town has, what we think the direction should be. And I think this would be the first steps in sort of examining and deciding what we think about it. Is that okay with you guys?
Yes.
Right. So I've got it on the laptop. I'm going to just go up there and put it up on the screen. All right.
So we turn the lights off up front? Or can you see
Yeah,
it?
Tony,
Okay.
if you want to hit that light, maybe. So I'm just starting with, I don't know if should I make this bigger? Can people see that? Yes, no, too small, kind of small. Let's see. now it's giving me the AI version, which I don't use. This is great. Here we go. All right. Close that. Is that better?
Yep.
Okay, so this is phase 4. And Todd can talk about this better than I, maybe later to touch on it, but I think the conclusion we've sort of drawn, oh, good, Ed is here. Hi, Ed. Online. We should say that phase 1 and 2 seem to be pretty cost effective. It's the most densely populated part of the town, and it's done, so it's really not a point of debate. And phase 3, we didn't really examine too closely, but again, it's committed to, so we're not really entering that discussion. But we did look at phase 4, and these numbers are budget figures taken from, for the sewer portion of it, from the AECOM cost projections generated in August of, I believe it was August of 2023 for the town, which we received from the town a little while ago. And I just want to frame how I looked at it and how we looked at it as a group. The cost of sewer can be looked at a couple different ways. The town can look at it as to how much debt they incur. We're looking at it in terms of what's the actual cost, because you've got betterments and the cost to connect, and those are the two main things. So if you add those together, and I did hand out some backup information to show what all the calculations were to support these numbers. These are the results to the committee so they could read them. And they're available, I suppose, if somebody wants them. We may get into it at some point. But sewer in phase 4, according to AECOM, plus the connection costs, and I can tell you, there are assumptions built in, but we used $30,000 per home, and that's about $45 million. It's 310 homes is the figure that the town has given us, so you're at about $1,100 a home. We've reduced it to, and this is what they do in the analysis when the engineers are discussing nitrogen removal and so on. We reduced it to a life cycle cost of kilograms of nitrogen removed per year, because that's the goal, is removing nitrogen. And you can see pretty quickly.
David?
Yes. Sorry.
David, would you back up a little bit and go over that annual operating and maintenance home, the $1,100, $300, $150, particularly the $1,100 as it relates to sewer operation?
Sure.
A, and B, does that include any of the betterment?
No, betterment's not even in this. The betterment would come out of, let me make a simple analysis. I think that their original projection was 42 million just for the sewer part, but let's call it 40 for simple math. 40 minus 25% for the subsidy. That's the subsidy, or the water subsidy we get. So it's 30 million. And then the town has been, I don't know what they're going to be doing then, charges a betterment of 20% of that to the 310 homeowners. We kept that betterment. We did not remove the betterment. We did remove the 25%, but we didn't remove the betterment because it's an actual total cost. So we're trying to represent to the homeowners, what is your actual cost? And we added the connection cost of $30,000. The $1,100 that you're asking about is what we've literally pulled off of a variety of different websites and AI as to what does it cost per year for your maintenance of the sewer system. And so it's usually reflected in the fees that you're paying for your sewer charge and your water bill. But again, that can vary up or down, and that's what that represents, though.
Yeah, I think, David.
Yes.
I believe you misspoke before.
I might have,
confusing
yeah.
the two. The cost per parcel for phase 4 is over $100,000 per parcel.
Oh, did I say that
You
was?
said- yeah, you said
oh,
that.
yeah, that's totally wrong.
Yeah, so it's about 120, 130,000 per parcel, using the numbers we have from the town and the assumptions of 310 houses being served, or 310 parcels being served. That averages out to about 120 to 130.
It's actually a little more, about 145.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, that is the comparison, sorry, and that's the comparison to the cost you're gonna go through now for urine diversion and composting as
Correct.
alternative solutions.
Correct. Thank you, Todd. Yes. Yeah, it's about 145,000 per house versus, and we do a combination here. Sewer, basically, you're going to see this in general. Sewer and urine diversion are about the same cost structure. They don't vary dramatically, and we include both because they're both in the discussion publicly. People have been talking about it, and the reality is likely that if this was ever to be implemented, it would be a combination of those. You know, that seems to be what it seems to be the direction of where it's going. But we just wanted to be able to show it because people can see, you know, that they're really not a whole lot of difference in cost. So you can see the urine diversion and the compost toilet, you know, urine at 6.78. Again, these aren't precise figures, but they're order of magnitude budget figures. Again, annual operating and maintenance, these are estimates. It could be $300, it could be $500. It doesn't really change the overall analysis. And you can see at the end, life cycle cost of, and this is in a 30-year life cycle. Again, just to give a point of reference, $217 for the urine and $224 for compost. And bear in mind, within these, urine diversion requires more homes than sewer or compost do because the calculations that they use are that it's using a less percentage of the nitrogen captured, so you do more homes to capture the total amount of nitrogen that they want to capture within that phase. And that still is the cost. So you can see the assumptions built into it. Again, sewer capital, original cost, plus homeowner connection, etc. Any questions on this piece? Again, these are just to give you a general understanding of what the order of magnitude costs are. And you can see at the bottom here, total cost of sewer of, say, about 45 million versus 7 million versus 9 million. You're saving a reduction of, you know, 36 to 38 million dollars on these, using these assumptions. We could say if we were off by 100 or 50%, you could cut that in half. It's still a pretty big number.
I think the most. The most.
The reason you speak it to
To the Zooms.
people at home can only hear
Yeah.
you if you go through that.
So I think the key message here is if you think about the number of homes being served and the total cost of each of these systems, what David's proposing or presenting here for urine diversion and composting would be the total cost of putting urine diversion or composting systems into all of those 310 homes. And this is the aggregate cost, so it is an order of magnitude. I mean, we're talking about an 80% reduction in the capital outlay to put in systems for urine diversion and composting as opposed to sewering. And so when we, as David's suggesting, if we allow for, you know, some variation of those numbers, it's not going to wipe out an 80% reduction in cost. So even if sewer turns out to be a little cheaper or urine diversion and composting a little bit more expensive, even twice as expensive, you're still talking about a near 50% reduction.
Hey, David?
Yeah, I think Ed was looking at his hand up.
Yeah. I think it's also really important to point out that this $36 to $38 million savings is just for phase 4 alone. It's not the next 12 phases. It's one phase.
Precisely.
We're saving $38 million. How
Potentially.
more compelling do you have to be?
Well, I'll tell you, Ed, because when you look at phases 5 through 16, the number goes up by another $800 million for sewering.
Yeah, that's right.
And-
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
If we save $40 million on one phase, imagine what the other 12 are going to save us.
Well, the other 12 get even more expensive per parcel because the houses are farther apart in many of those locations. There are fewer
And there's
parcels
inflation.
served. Well, the inflation is largely taken into account. So AECOM did do an inflation projection. We can
Yeah.
debate whether we use the right rate or not, but it's
Right.
a 3 or 4%
Okay.
inflation rate, which I think is reasonable. But it does account for the fact that this is going to take place over 40 plus years. But it's still it's a daunting number, and based on the work you've been doing, Ed, around looking at the town's debt service and ability to
Yeah.
keep funding debt, borrowing even it works out to be about half of that is borrowed at any one time over the life of the sewer project.
Right,
It's
right.
a multiple of our current borrowing, which is
Definitely.
not things that S&P thinks stay with our AAA rating.
No, a very good point.
And this is why I'm doing phases that, and I should say for bigger picture, the reason we did phase 4 and then we'll do one more phase is because we seem to have the most accurate numbers from the town and the most recent from ACOM and the WMAC, you know, the White Wastewater Management Advisory Committee, just to try to get it as close to what we have for real numbers as we could. So let's see, anything else? That's it for this phase. And again, these are for illustrations. So let me pop the next one.
David,
Yes.
for the benefit of people at home, is this an either or that you would use either urine diversion or compost, or is it combining, or is it an A plus B? Is it an A or B or an A plus B? And obviously, there's still a plus C because regardless, people still have to have a functional Title V in order to do this, correct?
Yeah, again, I'm not an expert, but the general idea is that this is a replacement. It is a true alternative to sewer.
Is it
You,
one or the other, or is it you get to choose?
well, if you build a sewer, according to the town, and I think the state, if they build the sewer, you're required to hook up, which is a whole nother issue. And so it's really a fork in the road. Do you go to sewer? And if you do, everybody's required to go on. If you don't, you have to have another plan. You know, this is not
So I think this is probably a good place to
Yeah.
go, to take one step back, which is the commitment we have as a town to the state to protect the waters is to remove a certain amount of nitrogen from the effluent going into the waterways.
Correct.
And there are multiple ways to remove that nitrogen. One is sewering every house that gets us to that nitrogen reduction. A second option is putting in urine diversion systems in probably more parcels to be able to get the equivalent nitrogen reduction. Or to Elaine's point, I think you could solve this also with urine diversion and composting, or composting alone for some number that's between those first two numbers. You know, so there is probably an A plus B as a probably most likely outcome, because if you're putting in new plumbing technology, it probably makes sense to do both, but that's something that we can explore when we go through this proposed, you know, use case to say, how do these work? How can we get them adopted? How many parcels have to be covered in order to achieve that nitrogen reduction? Because we have to meet the commitment to remove the nitrogen. The question, and I think that we're trying to educate the town on, is there's multiple paths to do that, and some of them cost way more than others. And if we can get people to understand the order of magnitude cost savings, it's going to be a lot easier sell to get people to understand and embrace the ideas of urine diversion and composting solutions when they come at a price of 10 to 20 cents on the dollar.
Elaine, I think you were questioning whether the $38 million savings and the $36 million, they are A or B. Because what they're suggesting here is that if you have the urine diversion, you would have to do more places. And so there's a bit more money involved in it. If you do the composting, you have fewer locations needed to remove a similar amount of carbon. And so it's,
Nitrogen, but yes.
yeah.
You're correct.
Expensive.
Yeah, thank you.
Right. Yeah, and we're just doing this to math modeling. You know, the reality is they probably do a combination, but we don't know that yet. You know, I just threw this chart up to give you a sort of a visual. Those are those same figures for the capital costs of what, you know, just to give you a sort of a visual image of what the difference is. It's significant. Let's see, what is that? All right, so the second illustration. Let me close this. Oh gosh, what's new? We don't care. Is that better? So Mill Pond. And Mill Pond has been, the town has spent a lot of time dealing with this recently, actually for months. And that's sort of a topic unto itself, but there's some pretty good numbers that I had done numbers on this months ago, and had a public comment when they had a Mill Pond meeting about it. But then we've updated a bit, and I think they've just had some meetings very recently on it, bit of information which I'll touch on in a second. But anyway, you'll see that the figures are relatively the same in terms of I just jumped to kilograms removed. This is phase 11, I believe. Mill Pond is phase 11. Under the current, those phases might change. And you can see, again, sewer, as I'll call it, a loaded cost, is about $30 million. The number the town originally had, I'm doing this from memory, I think it was like 29 million, but then Tim Harrison from AECOM did a presentation for the WMAC just recently where he used 26 million. Doesn't make a whole lot of difference, so I used 26 million. I just made notes so you guys would see that that's where it came from. And when you add connection costs, after the subsidy, we include the subsidy. And the subsidy is a whole nother question that we'd want to address with someday, because there could be some question with, how long will that 25% subsidy actually last? But we're not dealing with that tonight. So now you're up to around 215,000 on this phase, according to the figures that they've given us for 140 homes. But again, you see the numbers, kilogram nitrogen removed. The way we did the numbers came out to about 1332. Tim Harrison, in his presentation a couple of weeks ago, said $1,300. So we're in agreement, which was reassuring to me that I'm not way off base, that we're not way off base in putting these things together, at least for that figure. And again, when you sort of net it out, you can see this cost reduction for relative comparison. Compost is about 26 million less, and urine is roughly the same, 24, 25 million less. You do more homes under the urine, but that's what it comes to. So again, this. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Tony. You had a question?
No, Ed has his hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry. Ed, do you still have your hand up, or is that a new one?
A new one.
Okay, good.
A new.
Absolutely.
Your information is so thought-provoking. My question is this: as we complete the sewering of the more densely populated areas of town and start looking at the less densely populated areas, we're going to start getting into areas where homes are not primary residence, they're secondary, tertiary residences, and are occupied maybe a month, 6 weeks, a year. So their contribution to their nitrogen contribution is relatively low compared to a full-timer, and the cost to sewer is extraordinarily high. Will your numbers reflect that sort of stuff? Do you believe, as you get to the phases that will be constructing sewer in the less densely populated and primarily part-time owner residences?
I think I wouldn't touch on, at least to my knowledge, on the fact of how occupied the houses are. But I believe the fact is that they're less densely populated. Because we said in the beginning, downtown was probably a good application of this. You had densely populated, you had future housing coming. It provides the capacity to be able to do a lot of that. Right. And I think it's much more manageable. But what we're seeing it appears to be literally a product of geography. Todd wanted to say something.
Well, I assume that AECOM and the town, when they put the phases and plan together, did take into account some equalization across water usage, and I think that was the proxy they had for the amount of sewage that would be ultimately generated, is how much water is being used by those parcels as a way of equalizing. So I would imagine when they came up with the number of parcels to be served in each sewer phase, they took a combination of how much water use gets us the assumed nitrogen reduction that we need. But they also had to make some adjustments because some of those parcels are not logistically reachable by sewer. Many of the ones that sit up on top of the dunes and the higher ground are not physically able to, or in any kind of, even in this model, cost-effective way connected to the sewer, the urine diversion and composting solutions, because they're done by parcel, they don't require the big infrastructure build, could actually allow us to go back and revisit, if we decide that this is a path the town goes down, to revisit some of those potentially higher impact parcels that were left off the sewering plan, but might be right on the edge of the watershed. And so we could end up with a better nitrogen capture on more impactful parcels at a much lower cost. But I don't think we have an error, I'm not assuming we have an error in the modeling the town did around picking the right number of parcels to get the nitrogen reduction.
No, I'm not questioning the modeling. Matter of fact, I think you've done a great job and it's very credible. I'm just thinking as the sewer phases continue and we get to more remote, less year-round residences, will a $40 million sewer phase make economic sense to reduce nitrogen that's only being contributed to the environment for 6 weeks a year?
Yeah, the short answer is probably not.
Yeah.
But we don't really know
But
that part.
I don't, and I think, I'm almost saying, I think our argument gets even better because
I do too.
if we can use these alternative technologies in parcels that weren't originally serviceable, you might actually need fewer parcels solved because you're getting farther off Route 28. You know, the stuff,
Precisely.
stuff way inland on 28 maybe wasn't contributing a whole lot of nitrogen, but if you can get the waterfront properties now through urine diversion and composting, you actually have a much bigger impact on the nitrogen going into certainly the Pleasant Bay.
I'm just thinking that your KGN removed, when the N is low and the capital cost is high, the cost of N removed is very high.
Yeah, which is why you have that 1,300 versus less than 200.
Right, but you go out to some place where you only have summer residents and 6 weeks a year occupancy, that 1,300 could end up being 133,000.
Well, and certainly when you figure out the per parcel cost, it will be. As we looked out, as David said, phase 4 is in that 140,000 per parcel range. When you extrapolate the total capital costs over 6 through 16, that number quickly gets up near 400,000 per parcel. And you start thinking about, is the town really spending $500,000 per home to put sewering in to achieve this reduction when there's an alternative that's in the tens of thousands?
And the nitrogen contribution by those homes is 10% of the ones that we just did.
Well, we don't. I just want to be cautious. We don't really know what the nitrogen. We just take their numbers of nitrogen contribution. It's their numbers, not ours.
And they've already set the net.
Correct.
Over enough parcels to capture the amount of nitrogen that the town thinks we need to remove, and I think we have to trust that part of their analysis.
That's their stuff. Yeah.
But it may turn out that these alternatives can be deployed in different locations at a lower total cost than even what our projections.
Exactly.
So again, I think we touched the base on this, but you can see the per kilogram cost. It ties right in with what Tim Harrison had a note there saying, he had used $1,300. And this is just a recap of those same figures that appear above. So that is that slide for the moment. And again, there is another graph bar. It looks almost identical to the other one. The one is very high and the other two are low. So I won't make us go look at that again. Let me get one more here. Let's see. Okay. So, and I'm probably let Todd talk about. Oh darn! I closed the wrong one. Sorry. All right, so this is a slide. Again, it's a rough estimate trying to take the AECOM numbers, and I should preface this, and Todd can talk about it too. But this is a shifting thing. In fairness to everybody, this is not to say, hey, these are numbers from 2023 from the town. They do have an inflation figure of 4% per year, which is reasonable. That goes out through 2065, which is the last phase. But things change. They're talking about mitigation from the marshes. They may be getting better performance from stuff they've already, you know, I'm not up to speed on that, but I'm hearing bits and pieces, which is all good news. If it's going better than they expected, then that's great. But I think that helps on the tail end some, you know, and I don't think it changes the order of magnitude. But anyway, Todd could touch base. What we tried to do is just give you a rough idea so we have a grasp, because part of planning financial is to look into the future. And thus far, to our experience, we haven't seen numbers that project out to actually what the full 16 phases might entail for us. And therefore, you make decisions today based on what the overall is. Go ahead, Todd.
So I think, you know, the town is required to put together capital plans on a 5-year horizon. And I believe that's Commonwealth law, but it's a required process. It gets presented to the taxpayers at town meeting on a, you know, periodic basis. But that 5-year update kind of limits our ability to look farther into the future. And when we sign up for a 40-plus year project like this, you know, as David and Elaine and I were talking about this, it's an opportunity for the finance committee to take that longer term view than the town can take to look at what does phases 6 through 16 look like. And, you know, the numbers are moving. I don't think they move by an order of magnitude, but there's somewhere between, you know, 3,500 and 4,500 homes or parcels that are meant to be sewered on the full 16 phase plan. 1,600 plus of which are already covered by phases 1, 2, and 3. That makes a lot of sense when you think about the high density of the downtown and Meeting House Pond areas. We've already either are in process to or have already connected to home parcels that total over 1,600. Right? That has achieved almost half of the expected to be sewered parcels, and we spent about $150 million to get that done. That's a big number, but it's actually a probably pretty efficient way of addressing those 1,600 parcels. The next 2,500 parcels are going to require another $850 million of capital investment to serve. And so if you look at the average cost per parcel, which is what we're trying to show here, is that number moves to almost $300,000 across phases 6 through 16, with some of those later phases being closer to $500,000 per parcel in an individual phase basis, but averaging out at $300,000 per parcel for sewer build. And when we started looking at what would it take for the town to, you know, finance or underwrite the implementation of some alternatives, we're coming up with numbers that come in at 10 cents on the dollar to that. And so that was the reason here for making sure that we understand both the big long-term picture and the capital cost to do it. The reality is homeowners are going to spend more than the cost of urine diversion and composting systems just to connect to the sewer. So if the town can instead find some way of building a rebate or incentive process to make that investment in infrastructure in each parcel and make that near cost neutral to the parcel owner, the town still saves 90 cents on the dollar and the homeowner doesn't have any of that direct expense. They do have their portion of the 10 cents on the dollar the town is funding, but they were going to be funding a lot more than that in their taxes if we hadn't done this. So that was the reason to say, you know, phase 4 is a compelling place for us to take a look at. This is where the cost curve really starts to change. And we're at a point where we haven't spent the lion's share phase 4 yet. So if there's an opportunity to pause, this might be it. But certainly before we get into phases 5 through 16, make sure that the voters and taxpayers understand this cost structure and the alternatives that are approved and available that we ought to be evaluating.
And when you say approved and available, that's in process too, you know, and we, part of this was we suggested the potential of doing a demonstration project in Orleans. Any questions on this slide here? Yeah, Peter.
Just kind of backing up a little bit, but I think this one kind of, you know, captures a critical point where decision makers maybe need to digest this and stand down or stand back until people can begin to absorb what you're presenting, because I think it really alters the course that has been projected to move forward. And if what you've presented to date indicates that maybe in the ramping up of this project, some critical assumptions have been made without kind of looking at the landscape as it changes with new technology and new understanding. The people that have made those decisions, or the entities that have made the decisions that have got us to this point, have a tremendous investment in continuing in this project. And it's not to fault or to criticize anybody, but it's human nature. And in capital project planning, it is in many ways a fatal mistake. That there are hundreds of examples across the country, both federal and state, where they move down this capital investment even when there are indicators that maybe that path is the wrong one to take. And just for history, since some of us have been maybe around longer, this was a caution that was raised 10, 12 years ago by a group of people in town that were called the Small Pipes people, who cautioned that if you lock in to these huge capital infrastructure projects without evaluating technology and changes, you're gonna make a fatal mistake. And just from my perch, I would say that what you've raised here kind of gets to that issue where maybe the decision makers need to stop, reevaluate, take this into consideration, and maybe pause and kind of frame where they're at, and give the taxpayers an opportunity to see this, to understand it, and maybe again have a say in where we go in future phases. Because when you look at almost $1 billion over the life of this proposed project, and we have a tremendous concern about affordability in town, the affordability in the future is gonna be devastating to the town's ability to attract and keep people, because when costs per unit start to move into the $300,000 phase, you're just adding a tremendous burden. And then the other thing I think, and maybe you haven't captured it yet, but that operating and maintenance in every capital project I've ever been involved in has always been way underestimated, and everybody comes back to the table because we underestimated cost of materials, cost of installation, cost of utilities, breakdowns, delivery. So, I mean, I really applaud you. I mean, I think, to me, this is really eye-opening and really needs to be seriously considered, and people that have their prejudices or their preformed opinions about the whole issue of the nitrogen removal and how to get there, this really challenges it. And I think people really need to kind of open their eyes, take a look at it, and maybe not jump to the invested conclusions that they've formed. So I really applaud you. I mean, I think this is incredible what you put together, and raises another question: why wasn't it done, by the consultants as part of a critical thinking process, you always gotta look at all the options, the opportunities, and I really think that the town failed to do that. There was so much pressure from the consultants, the architects, and I'm sure from my experience behind the scene, the providers and the winners of the contracts. And I don't want to cast any aspersions, but having been involved in over $1 billion of capital construction in government, I can assure you, behind the scenes, the gremlins are at work. So,
Tony, you have a question or comment?
I do.
Agreed.
David, I think you should be applauded for precipitating this, and Todd, thank you so much for putting these numbers together. They are so stark that I think that this needs to be brought soon to the select board at a minimum. And that, not pointing fingers to why didn't you, but pointing out there are technologies now that weren't available. I don't know whether they were or not, but give them an out. And now that we look at these new technologies, we've run some numbers. And these are the numbers, and you ought to see them. So it's not, people, as you say, people will get defensive, but don't make them defensive by saying they were wrong. Let's just say new information, and this is what we've done, because, a little sugar goes a long way. And
Todd
but
is-
anyway, I commend you for this.
Thanks, Tony. Todd has something to say.
In every iteration of our conversations on this to date, phase 1, phase 2, and probably phase 3, although I didn't do any in-depth analysis on 3, I can't come up with a better solution. I don't think you can do the kind of alternatives we're talking about here in those high-density solutions, certainly not without a massive disruption to the downtown of Orleans. I think what the sewer did was exceptionally effective at addressing those high concentration, high population density areas. And
Commercial.
yeah, and I think when you pick up the restaurants and the other applications there, I don't know how you would have done this alternatively in those locations. And I think, that shouldn't be lost. The goal was to be, as Orleans likes to be, at the forefront, aggressively solving these problems so that we retain control as a town over our own destiny. Absent that, the state comes in and starts telling us what to do. And that's not something this town wants, at least not in my experience here. So, I think that should be recognized and commended, because the first couple phases here have been highly effective at moving us very quickly to address a real need. The pause, I think, is warranted because in the Finance Committee, we have the unique opportunity of taking the 5-year lenses off and looking way out. The town can't do that. The select board gets pulled in 1,000 different directions all the time by every constituent. Wastewater management, same challenges. The town staff, same challenges. We have the kind of unique opportunity to say, well, what happens if we looked farther out and start doing some of that math? Tony, I'm not going to argue with you on the question about the consultants, and Peter, you raised it too. I would have liked to have seen this in some of the work that was presented to the town for the fees we paid, but I can't find it. So as we go through this is an opportunity for us to do just that. Give the taxpayers, the voters, the select board, the stakeholders the opportunity to say, we are unwavering in our commitment to get the nitrogen out of the water. We have to address that, but we also have to be financially responsible to the taxpayer and the town, because I think we've passed the point where if this goes unchecked, it's not an if or on other things we'd like to have. I'm not sure how we afford this, let alone the other things we absolutely want to be able to do in this town. And, we've then given up our control over Orleans to the balance sheet as opposed to some state regulator. And I would rather, Orleans continue to do what it does, which is lead at the forefront of creatively solving these problems quicker than others so that we can have the impact we want to have.
Agreed. Thank you. I think I can turn this off if that's okay with you guys. And we can continue discussion because that's what's on the agenda.
It's heading up again.
Ed?
Is your hand up?
Yeah.
Okay.
Great work. I think it's really important now for us to decide with whom, when, and how we share this information to make sure it gets before decision makers as soon as possible.
I agree.
And I'd like to continue discussion, but I see a hand up for iPad, or it was just a second ago.
That was me.
Oh, it is? Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Oh, okay, great. Yeah, I mean, that's one of the questions.
Good.
I mean, Michael may be able to help us out with that in terms of doing that, and provide us some guidance, which we would appreciate. I think,
So,
wanna say
so,
something?
yeah,
Oh, go ahead, Lorraine.
yeah, David, one of the things that we had been talking about is continuing this conversation, but continuing it with the Board of Water and Sewer Commissioners, because that is the group to which the Select Board has subrogated the care and control of this whole project, and they report to the Select Board. So I think the next step would be going to that board and saying, can we get together and talk about what's going on? I know a number of those committee members are very cognizant of what we're doing and are as interested in saving money and as we are. And I would like to see us work together to, as a community, to see if we can't work on how to educate the rest of the town. So we need to be in agreement with the Board of Water and Sewer Commissioners and maybe work with them to figure out a way to step forward with the Select Board to develop a whole process of education around the town. And part of that education, and I think one reason we want to talk about this is keep moving along, David, I'll defer to you on this, is the fact that we might, as part of that education, want to be thinking about having some kind of a warrant article that funds some composting toilets in public places around town, whether there's one put down at Parish Park, Nauset Beach, Skakit Beach, so people can see what they look like and kind of get over there. What do you mean by composting toilets? So they can have a visual take on what it is. Some of us have seen the one that's up at the Wellfleet Audubon. And then there's another step, and that has to be done quickly because I believe the deadline for the warrants are coming quickly.
September 23rd.
So, to you, David. Sorry.
no, don't be sorry. I'm glad you're speaking. I had a couple of thoughts, but other people? Yeah, Tony?
You say you know people on that. They're not going to be defensive about this.
Oh, no, I think they're as interested as we are.
Oh, good, okay.
Absolutely. I don't think they see this as a threat. They're probably going to welcome, wow, somebody else is actually looking at what we're doing with the wastewater. And as David said, and Todd, you referred to it too, Orleans has traditionally tried to be at the forefront of doing what's the best way. So, Falmouth has been doing some of this work out there, but, maybe it's time for Orleans to say, particularly given what this is costing, to sit there and say, how do we move it to the next kind of late 21st century step? I will work on the assumption that we all want to work together.
Absolutely. I mean, it's vital that we work together. It's so much more effective than having a battle. None of this is intended to diminish what other people have done. Frankly, I have a lot of sympathy. It was a big battle to get the sewers started. I wasn't even here for all
Huge.
that. I was somewhat removed, but I was living here. And you saw it, and it was painful for the folks who had to get this going. It was yeoman's work. I mean, Michael probably knows better than I do, but I mean, it was brutal. And human nature is, if you put so much into it, it's very difficult to change from a course that you've kind of finally got it settled. So I have total sympathy for that. I'm just going, whoa, let's take a step back and look at this as we have and say, what is this picture really? What is this feasible? Does this picture really work? And do we have alternatives? And it appears that has changed as well. I know things are changing at the EPA. Folks I'm working with have actually gotten direct communication with the governor on some pieces of this. about talking about reclassification or classification of urine diversion and compost. So there's a positive trend, and I'm personally, we were talking earlier, poli-sci majors, you know? Things don't change oftentimes unless you make them change. And so there's a feedback loop sometimes, and the feedback loop can be you don't do anything, so it continues the way it is, or you say, no, we want to do this and affect that change. And I think we can play a big part in that. Ultimately, I think it's politics. I don't mean politics in a negative sense, small p. It's when the community is informed, and if the community says, whoa, we need to look at alternatives, then it supports the select board to be able to say, hey, we want to do this, because everybody wants us to do it.
Peter's point about sometimes the challenges with long-term capital investments and the being emotionally invested in some of those decisions. I think one of the good news about this type of project and the possible changes we're talking about is we don't run into the sunk cost fallacy challenge directly here. Like, phase 1, 2, and 3 should still be done. They largely are. The infrastructure necessary to make those work has been largely built. That needs to be maintained. The downtown of Orleans will continue to be sewered. We probably do need to get some updates on how does that change the long-term cost structure around flow and things like that. That's about, analysis that probably needs to be done, but nobody's
that
talking
has
about,
been done.
Yeah, nobody's talking about undoing, and that is probably some of the
Yeah.
most difficult things to get people to step back from is undoing the thing you've already built. We're not proposing that in any way. I think that
We're trying to undo plans to do things. That's difficult.
Well, even there,
Potentially.
it's pauses, right?
Yeah,
It's
it's
a
a pause.
pause
It's
to
a pause.
understand alternatives and make sure that people have an opportunity to get on the train with the solution as opposed to be getting run over by it. And I think that's the thing that often gets lost in the process of changing direction.
Tony?
The other thing that I think is critical, getting with them, the sewer committee, as soon as possible, to give them a chance to look at the numbers and change them if they want, and to get in their own mind to see what is going on. And I think the critical piece is what Todd said. They can be complimented on what they've achieved, but let's change now because we're looking at the future.
Ed's got his hand up too.
Oh, Ed, go ahead. Your hand is up.
Oh, thanks. I kind of got the sense, David, from your presentation that there is a degree of urgency here. And generally speaking, what does the committee think about having a multi-path approach, that we go to the sewer commission, but we also present our findings or our information to the select board now and indicate that we're getting feedback from sewer commissioners, also to the town manager, saying this is something we found, and why not to the public? What do we think? What do you think about taking a multi-path approach on this?
Thoughts? I'll say I agree.
I agree.
I don't mean to bombard people with it, but I think I would have loved to have done this a year ago, but we can't. So then the question is, how do we effectively and coherently communicate to people, to the various committees, as well as to the community? That's a
Numbers are
larger
so-
piece.
The numbers are so stark that I would think that a multi approach is absolutely the right thing, Ed. Absolutely.
I think time is very important.
Time is of the
And
essence.
I want people to share the urgency that we have on this. Because like you say, Tony, the numbers are so compelling. You can't put it down. And to do it, I'm just thinking, if we do, like the spear approach, where we do one body at a time, it's going to lose it. It's going to lose its, its enthusiasm. I think we have to have a broader approach, and tell everybody this is a work in progress, but it's a compelling work in progress.
I see another hand raised. We're going to recognize,
That's Talitha.
that's Talitha, okay.
It was just
all
her
right.
joining the meeting.
Yeah.
Can she join the meeting?
Oh, is that the question?
I move that Talitha Abramson, who can join the meeting.
I have no objection to that, yeah.
Who is
Hello,
she?
Talitha,
Please,
you want to
please.
introduce yourself?
Yeah.
Sure. My name's Talitha. I'm a resident of West Harwich. So I've been working with David and a group of folks across about 10 towns in the WIN network, or the Wastewater Innovation Network. And I used to run the Lower Cape Housing and ADU Resource Center. And so I came about the eco toilet solution as a way that ADUs could be built more easily. And then David and I crossed paths and started to work together in this network. I just wanted to extend an invite to folks who are interested in seeing this on the FinCom. There's going to be 2 tours coming up on Friday, the 11th of September and the 18th, and David has information about that. But it's one of the ways that we're trying to get the word out to other folks considering this across the Cape. And I wanted to just share that Orleans definitely is a leader, I think, in a lot of our eyes in terms of how you've approached things from fertilizer to, other important issues. And I think this is another place that they could lead in terms of really, as one of the members said, critically thinking about this in a way to pause and potentially pivot and include more options. But you're not alone. There's a lot of people in Western Mass that are looking at this. There are people in the Vineyard that are doing a demonstration project. I think that the time has come for this technology in a way that might not have been 10, 15 years ago. And it's exciting to see kind of the incremental development that I think at some point is going to become inevitable, just based on the financial hardships that the options we've been, considering to date they're just untenable for a lot of us. So I just wanted to share that perspective from our network. And if need be, we'll add another tour date if there are a lot of other people that want to come see basically 2 different ADUs that have 2 different eco toilets in them that you can see people every day using them in their residences.
Thank you.
Okay. And I think to Ed's question about the timely, the time impetus in this, I mean, anytime we're spending money, my bias is always to act faster rather than slower. But I do think there is a small inflection point in this year's upcoming budget, which is the expected spending of another $4+ million on final design work for Phase 4.
Yeah, I don't know the number, but
It was something, at least in the original ACOM budget, it was something in the ballpark of $4 to $5 million, $4 to $5 million, so single-digit millions. And the question is, so that we don't build that sunk cost fallacy problem for ourselves in Phase 4, one question is, do we spend that money right now? The other question is, how do we get this demonstration project in Orleans so that people can see these technologies deployed in homes they recognize, in neighborhoods they recognize, to be able to actually, personally connect with that as a solution that might go in their own homes. And I think, demonstrating that, whether it's at the beach facilities or other public facilities, but even probably some private homes, to demonstrate that the technology can work. And so there's 2 things here. One, the funding for that, and 2, and I think they probably can be separate questions, because no matter what, I think we want to work on getting this demonstration project off the ground, because if we don't end up pausing Phase 4, it doesn't get better with 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. It's so, I wouldn't want to put all my chips or all my eggs in one basket, but I do want to make sure that we, think about how do we get that demonstration project funded.
agreed, yeah. I was going to comment on that. We got to talk to the town, figure out how to put an article together if we're going to do that. But I think the point, we mentioned demonstration project, and I think maybe we should define what it's for and what it's supposed to accomplish. I'd just like to say that from my experience, what I'm seeing, it's not so much really a question of does this technology work. It's really a matter of public acceptance. And that's actually the words that are used by Mike Giggies, who's the consultant to the town for wastewater alternatives, wrote in 2013 and said, compost works, but there's a question about public acceptance, which is true. Most recently, this fall, 2025, he wrote very similar language in regarding Mill Pond, if you read those reports. He's actually talking about urine diversion. I don't think they even addressed compost. I forget, but they were talking about urine diversion, talked about the various aspects. But again, back to public acceptance being a question. What my concern has always been is that true, but that doesn't change unless, again, we go back to cause that to change. You know, you have to, it doesn't just happen by osmosis. So that's why we're talking about a potential of a demonstration project, and it's something that I think we should seriously consider doing. In rough terms, it's probably $500,000. We don't really know. It could be $750,000, but it's something in that range. And the idea would be, and I have some good information, I mean, good news, I think, to share in this context as well. But in my view, it's got to be in people's homes, because that's where the rub is. You know, you go, you know, how do you do it? And it's a fair question. You know, what's it going to be like in my house? And there are different ways to approach it. And the whole idea is what they're doing. We've discussed this with the guys who are running Falmouth and are consulting on Martha's Vineyard, that they're literally doing individual homes, and some are compost, some are urine diversion, some are combination, and the idea is not so much does the technology work, even though study will be done to see what are the performance. The question is, I think, public acceptance. And once they're installed, people use them. It's like, when did people get dishes? They thought dishes were ugly for your television, but now then they did it. Now they think they're ugly again because nobody does dishes. So it's public acceptance. It's what are you used to?
Cash and high expenses are a great change agent.
Hey, Ben.
Tony has a,
You have on the thing, a possible vote to forward this to, other committees. I would move that we, forward it as fast as we can to the wastewater committee, to the select board, and town management.
okay.
Second.
Is that a motion? Second?
Tony, would you consider adding DPW into that too?
Oh, of course, yes, sorry. Yes.
Because they run the sewer enterprise fund.
But could I, just a point of order, I'm going to ask Michael with your advice. We want to be respectful of everybody's time, Michael. I don't want to flood people for stuff in their inbox they don't need. I'd rather just go through channels and look for your guidance as to what you think might be the best way to do that.
I mean, if you would like to move this forward, I would definitely reach out, as Elaine said, to the Board of Water and Sewer.
Okay.
And I would also reach out to the Wastewater Management Advisory Committee. And if you have a joint meeting with them, you're going to include the DPW, of course, because they're in those meetings, and you're going to include our consultants. And those are the experts you're going to have to go through. You can also at the same time request to the select board, but I would suggest first going to those, getting feedback from them, refining whatever you feel like refining or not refining, and then present it to the select board. I think it's going to be a stronger presentation that you, once you go through there, you're going to get feedback. But if you want to send materials, that's great too. So I don't want to dissuade
Okay.
anybody from reaching out to the
Oh,
select
it's
board
fine. We
and
just want
setting
to
a meeting,
use
but
your guidance.
that's what I would recommend. Trying to secure a joint meeting with both of them and presenting with them.
Thank you. Yeah,
That would be the first step. And I think you're going to get a lot of select board people watching it.
Could I amend
Thank you.
my-
That's very helpful. Thank you.
could I amend my proposal to what Michael suggests we do, and then go to the select board?
Sure, you'd like to make a motion?
Well, I was going to amend my motion, yeah.
Sure, go ahead. Go ahead, Tony.
Oh, well,
If you want to,
I will make a motion that we try to precipitate a combination meeting of the wastewater, the sewer. Who else did you say, Michael?
Just those two bodies.
Okay, those two bodies, as soon as possible, to present these findings.
Should we be more explicit about a date?
Well, I was going to say as soon as possible, and leave it to David to work it out with the chair of the other committees.
I
Is there
think the goal would certainly be ahead of our next meeting, which is scheduled right now for September 10th.
Tenth.
So,
Yes.
you know, because from there, we have less than 2 weeks to have an
Right.
article drafted and approved for the warrant. So it's, you've got a very, very tight window. So
Yep.
it's between now and the 10th, I would say,
Right.
yes.
Let
David,
me
and-
pause a second. Is there a second?
Yeah, second.
Okay.
I second it.
Okay, now discussion. Yeah, sorry, I should have jumped in, but it's okay. I'm learning on the job.
Good
Any-
point, Todd.
Ed, you had something to say?
I agree with Todd that we should have it as one of our top agenda items at our September 10th meeting. So that means we should meet with those two committees or bodies prior to September 10th, well prior.
Well, we can try. I mean, we don't run their committees, but yeah, point taken. Elaine, did you have something?
I was just going to point out I have the dates that the Board of Water and Sewer and Wastewater Management Advisory Committees will be meeting. The next Board of Water and Sewer Commissioners, they are the regulatory committee that controls that. Their next meeting is September 16th. Wastewater Management, which is an advisory committee, their next meeting is September 10th, 10 to 12. And we're talking about getting a bunch of people together here.
Right.
These are, this will be around, I'm going to guess, maybe 20 people.
Does it have to be during one of their formal meetings? Can't we meet on an ad hoc basis with them
I
to
think
discuss this?
David and I, or David, will figure out some way.
Yeah.
Working the calendar is really tricky. But by all means, to Todd's point, if we want to have an article on for the next town meeting, it's got to be done quickly. But it also would be very much to our advantage if we could get wastewater management and/or the Board of Water and Sewer to join with us and have it sponsored, not just FinCom, but maybe by 2 or 3 committees, i.e. we get the power of all of us who are involved. And I think that as we look at the figures and do presentations, I think we'll get more people involved.
Well, I would hope you would talk and be able to get a large number of us together. Don't have to have everybody. It's before the 10th.
Yeah.
We'll have to do our best.
Whatever you
know,
can do.
We'll see what we can do.
I'm not
Yeah,
asking you to
again.
do more than your best.
And Michael, just a question, is your advice. So does it need, in your opinion, to be a formal joint meeting? Or is this something that we can send members to
Yes.
do
Yes,
present?
because you're working with
present?
quorums.
Yeah, you're working with
quorums.
quorums and
Yeah.
things like that. So yeah, it does need to be a formal meeting.
Well, no, just hear my question. So what if two, like a subgroup of the, say, FinCom presents to the committee on behalf of the FinCom? Is that legitimate or is that a problem?
It's not a problem.
Okay.
No, I mean, you can still, you
Just
can
to try to
always,
accommodate their schedule and
you
and
can
that kind
always
of thing,
go
you
to
know?
their meeting, and if they're willing to put it on an agenda,
Yeah.
they should be accommodating. Otherwise, you can do it at public speak. But if you do show up with more of your quorum, then you can just call your own meeting and still present.
Okay.
You can figure that stuff out.
Okay.
We'll make sure it's legal and everybody
Yeah.
respects the open meeting laws. But
Okay.
it's, it's generally different. It'd be like somebody saying to FinCom, I want to meet FinCom on a major issue in less than 2 weeks. I want everybody to get together, and we want,
Right.
let's, it's not always that quickly and that easy to marshal all these people together, but,
Totally understand.
Okay.
Yeah, I thank you. We agree.
and with the Warren article, there's the deadline. The language doesn't have to be perfect, and that can still be worked on a little bit, but it needs to be the understanding, and those can be parallel tracks at the same time if you're thinking, because you can always take it off if it doesn't end up materializing the way you want it to.
I was going to
Does that
ask
make
you
sense?
that. I was going to ask you that. And is that a Mark Real
Yes.
Avenue? Is that the place to go?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
But
No,
as
thank you.
Elaine said, of course, if you have the buy-in and support of other major committees in regards to this, it's always helpful
Mm-hmm.
when you go.
All right. Great. No, thank
Okay.
you. That's very helpful. We need your guidance. Dick, you had a question? Yeah.
Say the obvious, we could always move our meeting a couple days out too, if you want to have some separation between when our next meeting is and whenever you're able to accommodate the others.
Yeah. Yeah, it might be a bit of a scramble, but we'll do our best. And I told Elaine, I'll have to be zooming in on the 10th if we meet on the 10th because I'm out of town, but we'll manage that. I wanted to share a little bit of the good news I mentioned earlier, that this is just to give everybody context because we're all in different places, but the Wastewater Management Advisory Committee, I forget who gave me an update on this, but somebody gave me the heads up that they were considering, let me back up. The fire station has an issue with, to some degree,
Do we have to vote on the motion?
I'm sorry. Go
You're right,
ahead.
Craig.
Get right back.
Boy.
Thank you, Craig.
No problem.
I told you, remind me to not get off track.
And
Okay.
I believe because someone's virtual, we got to do roll call, right?
Yes, we do.
All right. I'll do it alphabetically by surname. David Abel,
Yes.
Elaine Bard,
Yes.
Dick Burdick,
Yes.
Ed Mahoney,
Yes.
Peter O'Meara,
Aye.
Craig Olivera votes yes, Tony Pearl,
Yes.
Todd Sullivan.
Yes.
Unanimous.
Thank you, Craig. Thank you. Fire station, just context. They, as you probably know, the sewer's not running there, at least not now. You know, it's a future phase apparently. And little background, in the spring when Ted Glant gave his presentation, I caught him as he was leaving out, as he's going to the men's room. And I said, hey, I didn't realize there was a sewer issue there. And I said, maybe you want to look at commercial compost. And he says, oh, I've never heard of it. And so I connected him with a gentleman named Connor Lally, who's running the Falmouth, one of the two people running the Falmouth demonstration project. And I didn't really hear anything after that much. I think they corresponded some with Mr. Pomeroy, who's the project manager. But then recently, I think the WMAC met on the 13th, so just like the day before, so I get word that they were considering advising the town to consider urine diversion for the fire station, which I thought fabulous, but maybe that's a good way. So I hustled, I got Connor to present a proposal, shot it over. The proposal is to create, and I can send you copies, basically do a feasibility study of, in a new construction of a fire station, determine, is it feasible, how does it work, what is the best source separation technology. And I sent it to the committee, and then I spoke with the committee, and they were kind enough to invite me in, say, hey, if you can ask for later in the meeting, we're going to address it then. And they, so in the address, I said, hey, I think it makes sense to look all your options. Maybe it's really a compost and urine or something like, because I'm not the technician. Maybe somebody else can do this for you. And they were very positive about it, and they voted unanimously to support that and to forward a recommendation to the select board and to the fire and emergency EMT station committee to recommend that they contract for this consultant. It's super cheap. It's like $400, which I think is way too cheap, but they can deal with that. So anyway, that's a positive sign. And I'm seeing little bits and pieces where people are beginning to think, well, maybe that's all good the more public acceptance you get. Personally, I don't want it to substitute for going into people's homes, because I think the big roadblock is people's homes. People say, yeah, it's great. Stick in the fire station, And so I'm just giving you for context. Anyway, that's what I wanted to add to it.
There's a meeting on the 31st of the building committee for fire rescue. Are you
Yes,
gonna go to that?
the meeting is the 31st. I will be attending that just to public speak, in support of that notion. I spoke again last night to the select board, public speak. My intention is to just get it public, get the word out so that more and more people can hear about this.
Have you talked to Kim yet?
Not about this, but she's at the meeting, so she knows.
Okay.
Yeah.
It was at last night's select board
Yeah,
meeting.
she's at the meeting, yeah. Okay, any other discussion on this issue right now?
Where exactly is the state with regard to acknowledging this new approach?
Right, it's a good question. Mass DEP says that, I believe it's DEP, says that composts are legal and acceptable. I believe the question has been that, what's the word I'm going to look for? I can't come up with the adjective, but perversely maybe, they don't actually, I believe, give credits on the TDMLs, which is the measurement of withheld nitrogen, which goes back to what I was saying earlier, that this is in process now. They're being asked to really address this because the science says that it is. I mean, if you put a compost in, it's
Well,
not going into the waterways.
What I understand is there is a path to getting the nitrogen
is.
reduction credit. It requires some kind of municipal or utility style monitoring or collection from those systems. So,
Currently.
yeah, my understanding is they don't actually produce a whole lot of things that have to be carted away, ever, or at least not with any kind of frequency. It doesn't.
If you
Actually,
do urine
it evap-
diversion, yes, that's true.
But even a lot of that, the nitrogen actually volatilizes into the atmosphere. I mean, 80% of our atmosphere is nitrogen, and so it's got an evaporation process that works that out. But my understanding is there is a path, and maybe this is what DEP continues to work on, making that more scalable and understandable by municipalities, to put in place some kind of a service, whether it's inspection or collection, to be able to evidence, because the problem with giving the nitrogen reduction credit without evidence of removal. Sewage, you can measure the effluent going through the sewage system. When it's deployed at each parcel, they don't have that central measurement and monitoring. But there are paths to do this, and I think this is the things the state has to work out. But we're talking about a project that's going out, tens of years into the future. So the hope is here, let's get on the path of demonstrating it works for the homeowner, for the public acceptance side of it, in parallel to the state's review and approval for how it gets deployed at a municipality-wide solution.
But I only raise it because it's an obvious pushback from the other side of the
Absolutely.
argument. And I think it kind of goes hand in glove with the whole acceptance concept.
Mhm.
But
Yeah, it's a concern.
This is, I think, part of the public acceptance, the DEP acceptance, or DEC, whatever the acronym is here, only gets changed when there's new evidence, new examples, new demonstrations for them to look at. Because otherwise, we just keep, every 10 years have the same conversation of, well, there's a question about public acceptance. Well, that question only gets changed, the answer to that question only gets changed if you put new information in front of people.
Yeah, but in the meantime, we have to have, to Dick's good point, you still have to have systems which are approved by the state. The compost toilets are definitely approved, and the urine diversion, I believe, is still in a state of limbo. I don't know if Talitha is still online. She is probably somebody that knows exactly
am.
what the
online.
status is on that. Am I right, Talitha? That you know the
So
status?
compost- Yeah, David had it right. Composting toilets as well as incinerating are allowed by right. The regulatory pathway for urine diversion is getting figured out by the demonstration project that's going to go off in Martha's Vineyard, as well as the Falmouth project, and then also hopefully what Rep. Luddy is trying to support through an amendment that she has. But I was one of the people that met with the DEP commissioner, as well as 6 of her staff, 2 of her deputy commissioners, some regional folks. It's a pretty exciting meeting, and she and her staff were very interested to hear about the interest around this technology, not just for watershed planning, but for, fiscal responsibility, as well as housing preservation and production on the Cape. It was not something that they really understood. I think the level of crisis that our towns are facing with this kind of nexus of all these issues coming together. And they were very open to it. And like David said, we also had a resident that was able to get directly to the governor about this, and just kind of laying out how this is a very affordable option that can hit many of the goals that her administration is looking to achieve, whether it's climate resilience, whether it's solvency of town budgets, water pollution, water conservation. I don't know if that was discussed tonight too, is, in the lower and outer Cape, water conservation is huge in terms of having our droughts and our water restrictions. And so to rely on fixtures that constantly use potable water to transport our waste when we could actually just collect it and save that water for drinking and other uses. That's another huge reason to look into this technology. So I think urine diversion, what we're trying to advocate for through this network is that they have a quicker permitting pathway for areas that are under such stress, like the Cape, coastal, and septic dependent communities that are facing all of these crises at once. Like David said, it's not a complicated technology where it's being used all over the world. Paris has a one square block housing development that's going to be all urine diverting. And they are then using the urine fertilizer for their city parks and I think their city fields. So it's being used all over the globe. We're just trying to figure out in this country how to kind of keep up with folks who are more forward thinking in terms of looking at circular economies, essentially. So I think urine diversion is going to be approved shortly. It's just not as clear of a regulatory pathway, being that composting is already approved under Title V. And the other issue we have to really, work with the DEP on is the gray water recycling piece as well, in terms of water conservation. So I don't know if that answered your question. It was long-winded.
Yes, thank you.
One more point, and again, just all contextual to the things that are changing. In fact, Talitha, you might correct me if I'm wrong, Talitha, but she said there's a company called Wasted, which started up in Vermont, I believe, and they would fertilize. They came out of the Rich Earth Institute. They did their research and they created a company, but they have a system for pasteurizing the urine and selling it for fertilizer, creating fertilizer and selling it. I think it's like $0.015 a gallon. They're actually selling it to farmers at this point. They were just licensed by the CEC in Middlebury, Mass, just I guess south of Worcester. So now they're coming in a sort of a central area in the state. So you see some pieces of infrastructure coming into place. So if you go to urine diversion, the pumping is easy. I've talked to pumpers here who say, yeah, it's not a big deal. You just change the nozzle and then get another truck. And so you begin to put the pieces in place. These are low tech, not high tech. It doesn't take millions of dollars of engineering to figure out how to do this, which is another piece of something we haven't touched on. It's a lot faster. We don't have to wait 40 years to try to save our ponds and waterways.
No.
40 to 60 years.
Can I jump in and just clarify what you said?
Yeah,
So,
I should probably garbled it.
Mass Clean Energy Center just awarded $350,000, I think as of this week, to Wasted, which is out of Burlington, Vermont. They had a Quincy facility and they had a contract with Orleans for porta potties last year. And so they have since gotten that grant. They're building a facility, a very large, facility south of Worcester, which will be able to service the whole state. And that's the exciting piece because people in Western Mass are starting to pilot this hopefully in the next year or so in terms of the Connecticut River Valley and their water quality. So Wasted is a huge partner in the pilot. And they got approval at the state level for the end result of the fertilizer that's derived from urine. So they have two fertilizers. I believe they have two fertilizers that are approved that are a dry powder, and then Rich Earth, which is a nonprofit in Brattleboro, Vermont, has a liquid fertilizer. They're the ones that have the pasteurization unit that MassTech has. So we have 3 fertilizers already approved. The irony is we don't have a fixture approved to collect it, to then process it, to get it to that end result. And so that's what we really tried to hammer to the DEP was this irony of silos not working together and having one approval at the end of the process and not the beginning even approved yet. So I think we got through to them on one level, but I think the more that they hear, it's not a fringe movement, that this is any time that people hear about this in relation to the economy of their town, it just makes sense. And that's where these tours that we give in Falmouth, when people see them in houses, there's not been one person that walks away from that tour that isn't completely sold. We had 4 legislators that were just blown away and said, why didn't we know about this sooner? It's a really powerful thing to see it in action in somebody's house and to know it's not some weird outhouse that you have some image of in your head, which is a complete stereotype. that they are a very modern looking fixture that looks basically like any other toilet. So I think there are pieces, like David said, they're coming together, and this is an exciting moment for you all to be considering this, as well as other towns that are neighboring you. So any other questions you have, I'm happy to field you to somebody who's more of an expert, or if I can answer it, I'd be delighted to.
Thank you. So we can go on this for a long time, I think, so maybe, but these are really good questions, and they point out things that we should, at some point, need to be pulled together so that its presentation is very informative, because there should be some public outreach to explain this to people. So can we close this topic now? Is that all right? Anything else you want to add for the moment? Yep, okay. The next item is vote to approve amended minute I believe,
I move to approve the amended meeting minutes of July 9th.
we had a couple corrections sent in, which we're thankful, so we made those. Yeah. Is there a second? Second. Yep. All right.
All right, roll call again. David Abel,
Yes?
Elaine Bard.
Yes.
Dick Burdick,
Yes.
Ed Mahoney,
Yes.
Peter O'Meara,
Yes.
Craig Oliver votes yes, Tony Pearl,
Yes.
Todd Sullivan.
Yes.
Yes. And do I have a motion to approve the minutes of
So moved.
July 23rd?
Second. All right, David Abel,
Yes.
Elaine Bard,
Yes.
Dick Burdick,
Yes.
Ed Mahoney,
Yes.
Peter O'Meara,
Yes.
Craig Oliver votes yes, Tony Pearl,
Yes.
Todd Sullivan.
Yes.
Great. Liaison reports. Does anybody have any liaison reports?
Oh, I have a very
Sure, Tony, go
very
ahead.
quick one. The Marine and Freshwater Quality Committee, they are reorganized. But the critical thing that I think you should know is this cyanobacteria testing has proven that, it appears that all the areas that we've tried to mitigate that it's been successful so far. And we're going to pay for all of Baker Pond, because the amount of frontage from our neighbors is not very great, and most of the benefit will accrue to us, and that is going to go forward. And then Mary Griffin noted that the first sampling event of the year went very well, and all planned samples at all the different water places have been collected.
Thank you. I know the Brewster, because I used to own a piece of land that came to a sliver, and it was in Brewster, and it just about touched Baker's Pond on the far side, so there's very little Brewster there.
Very little Brewster there.
Yeah. Any other liaison reports? No? Okay. Items for agenda for our next meeting. I'd like to get any suggestions. I'll say one, I think we've agreed that we want to talk about this article in one form or another. Hopefully we get a draft and we can move forward to that, if you guys are in agreement. And what else would you guys like to focus on or address?
Well, I would like for us to discuss our greater role of advising the town, advising the select board and others on financial policies and financial things that we might do along the way, and not just wait till the town committee. But I would like us to think about how we might talk to the administration about financial aspects that we find important.
I'm not saying yes or no. From my view, I'm just wondering, what do you mean exactly, so we get better definition, so we know what we're addressing?
Well, ways to save money, for instance, because I don't think that we have an atmosphere that focuses on that as much as we should. That would be one.
Okay.
Yeah, I might suggest a slight alternative, which is, I'd like for us to discuss what is the mechanism we're going to use to share our investigations, what we find with the public, I mean, with the taxpayers, with the voters. And that would be indifferent to what the topic is, but just sort of what are the different tools we want to start using to get a finance committee message out to the taxpayer in a way that they can digest it ahead of town meetings, ahead of votes, so that they can understand, here are the things we have looked at, here are the things we've learned, here are the places where we think there's more action needs to be taken, or here's places we want to dig deeper. I think that kind of a dialogue would be useful, and figuring out what are the mechanisms we use, what are the tools we use to get those messages out.
And Todd, are you thinking of things like the community space presentations or presentations or
Some of it might be at the
Newsletters
at the public speaking portion of other meetings in some cases. Some of it might be, the Chronicle, websites, other news outlets that people use to find out what's going on around town or what might be important.
Okay.
There's certainly the newsletter, Exit 89 does a big write-up ahead of every town meeting of my experience has been rather impartial assessments of each of the articles and kind of who's where on each of these issues. I think we could play a role, and maybe we have done historically, but, talk about what is the role we have in informing those pieces so they understand what are the different points of view, what are the different discussions that have happened. Because I do think we're going to have to take that multi-channel approach that we talked about. And I think, Tony, I think all of us, this is what we did last meeting, was agree we need to focus on the big financial impact items for Orleans. We can't chase all of them, but when we do pick one, how do we make sure that the town understands we've spent time on this, we've done work on this, and here's what we found? Because I think that is our charge, right? To understand all things financial. We're going to narrow that because we can't do all, but then to inform the taxpayer and voter of the investigations we've done and the findings we've reached. And I think that how do we do that should be discussed. We probably should solicit some ideas from people over time too of what other ways might be effective. But it would be good maybe to start that discussion of what are the different channels, what are the different tools we'd use.
Agreed, good suggestion. So we could maybe make a list at the next meeting.
Routinely provide our agenda to anyone outside having it posted.
It's posted on the
No,
website,
we
on the
post
town
it.
website there.
And there is a subscription service that people can sign up to get a text message when a new agenda gets posted for, each of the different committees in town, so.
But we don't routinely send it to the Chronicle or anything like
No, and I'm not sure the agenda,
committee
the way
does.
we've always, and I think logically, I think most committees have pretty brief agendas, and so I'm not sure the newspaper would care. But certainly if there's a soundbite afterwards that we wanted to get a message out, agreeing, how do we do that? How do we all get together and decide this is the statement we want to share? Because I don't think historically we've made those kinds of public statements.
We seem to be having the conversation about what we want to have at our next meeting right now. And to your point and to yours, Dick, in terms of getting information into the newspaper, there is a column in the Chronicle that each of the 4 towns has that says Orleans doings. And it might be that one of our finance committee members would like to say, and make it your job. No, I'm not going to do it. Make it somebody's job to tell that we get some. The finance committee will be discussing X at the following meeting.
And take a couple inches of that
Yeah,
column.
just a line.
Yep.
So, because I certainly read everything that's going on in each of those towns in terms of who's doing what.
And we'd have to be doing it a week and a half in advance because,
Yeah, like-
you need it last Thursday's Chronicle to have somebody understand what we're talking about
Right.
tonight. Which would have been a rush
Probably
last
Monday,
Thursday.
because we do the agendas on Monday, so we,
Yeah.
kind of, these are done on Monday.
But the
Sunday, Monday.
Chronicle goes to print for Thursday, so it's,
Right.
like, if people may, I read it this afternoon because I went to the post office,
Right.
but.
But it's online Wednesdays. It's put online on Wednesdays. It's just a
Good
thought.
suggestions. Yeah, absolutely. And Michael, maybe you could tell us, Amanda, is this something that's appropriate for Amanda if we had something we wanted to issue, or is it not? I don't want to impinge again, or impose.
Sure, I think you just ask. I think
Okay.
you would just reach out to her and ask, but she can also give you probably some guidance on
Okay.
what works for her and her expertise in the town, whether it's newsletters or emails, and, yeah.
Okay, yeah, it makes sense. Thank you. All right.
Ed has his hand up.
Oh, Ed, you got your hand up?
Yeah, in terms of a discussion or an agenda topic for next time, I've completed an analysis of our debt and debt service as of the date of our most recent financial statements, which is June 30th, 2025. And I have projected debt service out to 2032 and quantified what the financial implications are. We could discuss that next week or next meeting if you want, or if you think we have time. I think the sewer's going to take a lot of it. But
And-
you could tee it up for next time or the time after.
Okay, thank you. All right.
And David, I'll get it to you shortly, and you can disseminate it to everybody.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
Sure.
We have dates of future meetings, and I guess this may be subject to some change if we try to change this, but for now, we're scheduled for September 10th, the 24th, October 8th, October 22nd, and November 12th and 16th. Town meeting is the 16th, right? And these are all at 5:30. We do have a short meeting before town meeting. 5:30, meeting starts at 6. In case any loose ends, sometimes we have to vote on something.
We're gonna try not to do that, though.
Hopefully not, but it happens. you know?
David, with
Tony.
the scheduling of the room, how much flexibility do you have?
I believe we're scheduled now.
Yeah, I know, but to change.
I don't know.
Tonight was a change.
Yeah, Elaine, has.
Tonight was a change.
Yes, but I'm just saying, I was wondering, you know, I think these dates are fine, but I was asking whether, how much flexibility does the chair have to get the room for, if we want to change meeting dates? I don't.
It's just about availability.
Yeah.
I mean,
That's-
you've done the
no, that's what I
scheduling
mean,
so
yes,
far,
usually.
but, yeah.
This room is really tight.
Yeah.
I mean, this is well used.
Sometimes there's other rooms, right?
Yes, but if you've got a big group, this is it.
Right, right.
And certainly for the meeting of the wastewater and Board of Sewer, it's gonna need to be this room, because,
Of the technology available as well.
yeah, I mean, there's 20-plus people to attend the meeting itself, and then the need for public connectivity.
Yeah. And we may be limited to trying to do a presentation with a non-quorum. You're saying, Michael, if we showed up at a meeting and we had a quorum, we can just call a meeting, but we'd have to schedule an agenda and everything in advance, correct?
No,
48 hours,
Yeah. 48 hours,
yeah,
okay.
48 hours notice.
an agenda with one topic that you
Okay,
Right.
very simple.
all right. Okay, it gives us flexibility.
Do that, yes, 48 hours
Yep. Okay, I wasn't sure what the time limit was.
Meetings are right now, Elaine already knows.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
I move to adjourn.
I second.
On
don't have-
favor?
No roll call on that.
It's good to mention the time.
Oh, sorry, yeah, it is 7:08. Yeah.
Have you voted?
We have.
Yes, we're all in favor to adjourn. Thank you.